Now, speaking of some of the top teams in the Western Conference, the Lakers beat the living crap out of the Golden State Warriors yesterday. I mean, this game was over from the moment it tipped off. And this was kind of expected given the fashion in which the Lakers blew that 14-point lead to the Warriors in their first meeting at Staples Center. So this was kind of avenging that loss. And not to mention Dennis Schroeder, they got him back. He had missed the previous, 5 or 6 games, and this was his second game back due to the contact tracing and COVID protocols. And the Lakers beat the Portland Trailblazers on Friday, and then they beat the Warriors, obviously, last night. And this is the biggest flaw in sports, is evaluating teams when they're missing some of their key pieces and players. This is the biggest flaw in sports because we always try to evaluate how this team's going to perform from a binary perspective. Yes, they're playing better. No, they're not playing better. And this is the biggest misconception because what we fail to recognize is the addition of emotional lifts. Emotional lifts can't be understated. In life, if you're without your second or your third best asset, regardless of your industry, the overall value of that entity is going to depreciate. It's going to be devalued, right? And even what happens that we don't talk about is the value of your best asset when you're missing your second and third best assets. Your number one asset also devalues and depreciates. So what ends up happening is you're losing more than just your second and your third best piece at your disposal. You're also not getting 100% of your best piece. If you're a doctor and you're about to operate on someone and you're without your second or third best doctor colleague in the operational room with you, that's fewer eyeballs on the operation. That's less consulting. That's less guidance. So not only do you miss their advice, but your attitude as the number one overall doctor in the operational room probably diminishes a little bit because not that your confidence is shaken, because it may not shake, and hopefully it isn't, but it starts to recoil a little bit because there are less people to consult while you're in the operational room. So now all the doctors, all the nurses that are in this room with you, their value depreciates because you haven't inspired them to overall have this more positive energy and this positive outlook and flow while you're operating. So the entire value goes down. And now once one of those doctors re-enters the room, tranquility is restored. And that's the same thing that happened with the Lakers. That's what we were failing to factor in and acknowledge when we were looking at this Lakers team. It was like, well, listen, they're missing Anthony Davis, they're Dennis Schroeder. So we're expecting that all the other pieces on the team, including LeBron, were going to play at the exact same level that they were playing before. And in LeBron's case, we even expected that his level of play would elevate, when in reality, it was the exact antithesis of that. What happened was not only were the Lakers missing Anthony Davis, not only were they missing Dennis Schroeder, but they weren't getting 100% of LeBron. Maybe they were getting 90% of LeBron. So when you're missing two of your key guys, the impact goes beyond just directly what the numbers say. Because the rest of the supporting cast isn't playing the same. And the minute you add one of those two pieces back into the mix, you see what happens. The confidence is regained. The energy and the desire to win is restored. The players have a greater incentive to play better because they feel like they've got this extra assurance and sense of security that there are other guys that are going to rally around one another. And that's the impact that a second or a third guy can have on the number one player. So again, we always talk about, well, how is this going to impact the role players? Oh, the role players are going to have to step up. But how does this impact the number one option? How does your best asset do when he or she is missing their second and third best assets? Well, the overall entity depreciates. And so for the Lakers, this was a huge addition to get Dennis Schroeder back, because you saw the toll it was taking on LeBron, and he wasn't making excuses, but you could see that he was a little bit more lethargic and apathetic when it came to some of these regular season games. Against Utah, they got blown out, which is not surprising. And what's interesting is actually Steph pointed out how Draymond Green, who tweaked his ankle and missed the second half of the game, although the game again was already a 30-point game when he got injured, made a shrewd point, which is that teams still remember the stretch of dominance that the Warriors displayed over the last 5-6 seasons. Now, last year was obviously the aberration. Clay went down, Steph was out, so they weren't good. But prior to that, they were just coming off a finals run of like 4 finals in 5 years. So, or actually 5 finals in 6 years, something crazy like that. And so teams still remember getting demolished, getting demoralized, humiliated, and embarrassed by this Warriors team, that they just want to beat them as badly as they can while they have them down, kick them while they're down. And while I think that is a legitimate and fair point when it comes to most teams, the Lakers, they don't really feature many guys who were on teams. Like the Lakers, their roster wasn't a part of the purple and gold when the Warriors were blowing through the league. A lot of these guys played for different teams. Now, maybe on these different teams, they got destroyed by the Warriors. But while a member of the purple and gold, that never happened. So interesting to think about. But again, it just shows you the type of impact that the return of a player not just has on the team, but has on your best asset, and how that impact can trickle down to the rest of the squad.